Hey everyone, so this one's probably going to be a bit longer than it is in a topic that's pretty important to me. As you can probably tell by the thumbnail, I'm going to be talking about literacy and reading and books and all that sort of stuff. I'll try to break it down into a couple of sections. First being how this even came about and what prompted me to talk about it. And then I'll get into the benefits and the importance and why this matters to me. I'll be including a couple anecdotes. I don't expect to make, all my viewers into bookworms, but I do feel like this should be talked about and addressed a little bit. And this isn't, unfortunately, going to be quite as good as I originally planned. I was writing out my talking points, and there was some sort of glitch, and I lost about half of what I was writing. But, oh well. So this all basically came about because on Twitter, I follow Blair White, and if you don't know who that is, I'll be leaving a link to her YouTube channel in the description. She talks a lot about sort of the current issues about feminism, gender identity, all of that sort of drama-inducing kind of thing. But she had tweeted something about the Charlotte riots and the looting and asked why doesn't anyone go after books? And somebody, for some reason, thought that that was racist, as if it was implying that black people are dumb and don't read or something like that. To which I replied that I really saw it more as, questioning their priorities. Of all things to grab during a riot and a loot, why not books? And they had basically said because most people in society rarely read and big screen TVs are more valuable. Also, they can just buy books. Books are pretty cheap. Plasma screen TV is not. And that just kind of set off a whole wave of thoughts in my head about the importance of books and reading and even just the ability to read. It kind of set me off because priorities, again. And sorry, but books really aren't all that cheap. Compared to a TV, sure, but someone like me or students, those of us that make less than 20K a year, a $30 book is going to be kind of expensive. And that's about on par for most new books. And the value in general, in an abstract way, books are going to be much, much more valuable than a stupid box. And of course that brings us kind of around to the issue of materialism as well. People would rather take electronics and designer purses than something useful like a book. It makes me kind of sad, honestly. And I realize not everyone is going to be a bibliophile or a book collector or a really avid reader. I just think in the long run, a big shelf full of books is better and more interesting than a TV. And they're just much more eternal. Like, shows will come and go, some getting canceled halfway through a season. And TV nowadays seems to be just fake-ass drama and stupidity. And if you think about it, when you have TV, there's all this other cost that goes into it, like your cable bill and sports packages and electricity to some extent, I'm sure. So, there you go. Now, for reasons that reading and books are important. First of all, it's just fun. It's entertaining. It's relaxing. And of course, there's the educational value, but I realize that could be a big turnoff for some people. But even in fiction, there are lessons to be had, things to think about, vocabulary to gain. Some of my favorite words I only really discovered because it was in a novel I was reading. Or in the case of Sardonic, Sherlock Holmes story. And there really is something out there for everyone. There's an amazing range of topics and themes and writing styles that you just don't get exposed to in the 10th grade English class. Not all books are dry and just outright bad, like The Great Gatsby. And half the big movies nowadays, Harry Potter, Hunger Games, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, all based on books. And trust me, the books are always better. And then you have things like Incarnations of Immortality, This Perfect Day, American Gods, just about anything by Stephen King, Andromeda Strain, Clockwork Orange, I, Robot, 1984, which sadly the world seems to be turning into, but the list goes on and on. Another benefit for history. Where would we be without historical documents? All the writing on the Egyptian pyramids and monuments. Really, reading and writing is how we know anything about the past. Before there were photographs and Instagram, there was writing. And because of that, we have things like Shakespeare's plays, old Greek philosophy, Grimm's fairy tales, etc., etc. Honestly, so much more is possible if you're reading, even just a little bit, not sitting on the couch watching the fricken Kardashians. And sure, mindless TV does have its place, and sometimes we all need to just veg out and not think about anything, really. But again, priorities. And books do kind of smell nice, TV doesn't. And they can also be really pretty, so there's a strong element of aesthetic as well, which is always a bonus for anyone that's concerned about how their house looks. And literacy is just a basic skill that everyone should have. It needs to be encouraged and developed, and most certainly in the first worlds. How do you expect to get a better paying job and a more comfortable lifestyle if you can't read? Chances are a better job will require some level of schooling, whether that be vocational or university or a certification course. And almost none of them will be passable without being able to read. And just about everything else in life requires some little level of literacy and comprehension. And reading comprehension is another issue. People can read, but they don't necessarily fully understand what they're reading. And life could be maybe a bit less dramatic if people could actually make accurate conclusions and inferences from the passages that they read, whether that be academic papers or tweets. So many arguments online probably come from people just not understanding what was said and then putting words in the OP's mouth because they have no skills in reading comprehension. So tell me again why people should prioritize electronics over books when they're looting? I noticed the lack of reading happen even in my generation, and it's sad. My sister and I were always read to as kids, which definitely helps with the interests, developing the interest in reading, which I understand isn't really possible for every family unit with the busy schedules and the weird work hours and that sort of thing. But if you do have a TV, there are shows that can kind of kill two birds with one stone, like Wishbone.
What's the story, Wishbone? What's this you're dreaming of? Such big imagination on such a little bud. What's the story, Wishbone?
Or Reading Rainbow.
Butterfly in the sky, I can go twice as high. Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow.
And these shows, you get a screen to stare at instead of words, but it still instills, yeah, an interest in books and literacy in general. And how do you expect to get smarter if you don't read? Because there is a base level of smarts everyone should have just to survive, which, of course there are different kinds of knowledge. You can be smart and still get bad grades. Like, I was a C student in university, but I think anyone could benefit from some supplementation with books, even if they are more on the instructional side of things. Like, I actually went on Facebook to get some other opinions and reasons regarding the whole reading thing, and this is one of the responses. Information. When I taught in prison, I ordered some New York Times almanacs for my classroom. The guys really liked them. One man who was about to get released asked me if almanacs were available on the street. I believe he wanted to share them with his kids. And that to me is pretty awesome. There really is something for everyone when it comes to books. If you don't believe me, run a little experiment here. And then of course come back to leave a comment about how it worked out for you. So look at the type of TV that you watch, whether that's sci-fi or drama or reality type stuff like Ice Truckers or whatever else is on History Channel nowadays. Do some research about what books there are that are similar in the genre or narrative, and just pick one that sounds good. You can go onto Amazon and browse, and or talk to a librarian at your public library. They would probably have some sort of recommendations, and you can even probably borrow one of the books that you saw on Amazon for free. And once you have that book, just open it up to the first chapter, maybe put on some fun instrumental music, get comfy on the couch, and just start reading. And see whether or not you finish it. And I can almost bet that you will. There are very rare moments where I don't end up finishing something. And it's either because the writing is bad or I lost interest, which can occasionally happen. But I can say this with a decent amount of confidence because I turned someone into a reader. A coworker of mine a year or so ago, I almost always read on lunch break, and we were talking at one point. He said he didn't really like to read. I thought about what he might like, ended up recommending one of my personal favorites, let him borrow my copy, and he read through it completely, and actually really enjoyed it, and then moved on to another book. Feel like you wouldn't have time to read? Well, instead of falling asleep, laying in bed playing Candy Crush, why not read a few pages? Waiting at a doctor's office? Put down the magazine and pick up a paperback. It's hard for me to believe that people are so set on not reading. Like, it just doesn't occur to them that it might be worthwhile, that it doesn't have value. It kind of, so many books are going unloved, so to speak, passed up for the new Xbox game instead. And some games have no replayability. Granted, I've read books that I've read before instead of something else that I hadn't before, and then I wouldn't be so behind on my list now. There's quite a few classics I haven't gotten to, or series that I haven't finished, but oh well, I've still got most of a lifetime to catch up. So if you're still not convinced, here's a thought. What do you do if you can't pay your cable bill, or the power goes out? Especially if it's from a nasty storm where the power and everything is out for days. So now your phone is dead too. guess what doesn't run out of charge? Well, that's about it for now. What about you? Do you like to read? If so, what kind of books or stories? Obviously, leave your answers and comments down below. If you have any questions, you can leave those down below as well. And of course, if you have any recommendations as to what to talk about or what to review, leave that down below in the comments as well. And that is about it for now. So subscribe to stay up to date.
Y'all. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book.